Hello, hello, Barbarian Horde. I'm Joe from East Coast, and we're all the great Tom Highland here again. I hope I break up.
You are breaking up a little bit. Well, looks like we lost Joe there for a little bit, but anyhow, I'm Tom Highland. I occasionally co-host with the brothers Corinne. I'm a Substack partner with him, and the link to my Substack is in the description right there below my name. But anyhow, we've been here to talk about the Sword and Saturday, the latest thing so far, and whichever. I'm sorry,
There, we're back, and
sorry, I was starting to break up here.
Okay, no problem. And we have the combination.
It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
which is amazing. I have the same combination on my luggage. Anyways,
don't broadcast that live. Change the combination now.
All right.
Preparing to change the combination.
Preparing to change the combination.
Yeah, just do it.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Our internet is total. Yeah. Sorry. It's our weather.
It's Canadianing.
Yeah. So first off, right, we gotta cover Tom's essay, and this will be a good segue to have Tom take the lead for a while our internet stabilizes.
Well, for the essay was an open letter. I've been a participant and a friend with Dan and Joe on the Warrior Wednesday and Sword and Saturday, and I'm a writer as well. I published a Western novel on Draft Digital, and Joe and just recently published his book on through Amazon, and we're sorry.
It's okay. Wait, hold on. I gotta switch one thing. Share this tab instead. There. I gotta check some stuff out. People are still tagging me. Okay. Can you hear us, Tom?
Yes, I can. Loud and clear.
All right. I'm gonna do a diagnostic on our internet. It's just refusing. Sorry, our internet is really bad right now.
It happens sometimes.
Your open letter essay was a proposal for an idea you called Allied Authors, or AA. Yes, we have been drinking. And it was where those of us participating in these events should maybe and some other Iron Age writers like Lord Otter, Don Douglas, Eric Wegg, and there was a few others, and I'm blanking because I'm tired.
R.H. Snow.
And yeah, Rebecca, yeah, should get together and do an Image Comics thing. Now, there was someone in the comment section called Daniel Benson who ended up really raising some great points, and that's where it's like, apparently he and his wife are very business savvy, so that's really good, and that I think is something like worth talking to them about, because thing is, it's not often you come across someone kind enough to basically give you tips who has experience and the kind of pragmatism Royce and Richard have. A Skidaplistica, we've, and I believe you also mentioned that you're wanting to look at publishing books along with comics, tabletop, role-playing games, audio. Like when you say audio, do you mean audiobooks?
Audio books, audio dramas, because, well, I know for that
What's an audio?
the Galaxy Press, which publishes the works of L. Ron Hubbard, puts on these radio-style dramas of his works that are actually pretty good and good quality. Pretty good.
Oh, similar to how there used to be Superman audio stories.
What do you mean?
Yes.
Batman? Radio dramas?
Radio dramas, exactly.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was slow on the uptake there. All right. Yeah, I've listened to a few. They're pretty good from back in the 40s and the 80s. How did
There
that
was
die
a really
out?
good. There was a really good Superman radio drama show. If Dan wants to know, that he should check out. That's pretty interesting.
I think it might have died out due to the advent of the television.
Which,
Yeah.
well, yeah, but to an extent, no, because remember, England still continued the practice well into the 80s. And almost, I think, even into the 90s.
That's fair. All right.
What's weird is that now, on the other hand, I think in Quebec it was popular, from what I understand. But the only reason I'm willing to bet that it was popular in Quebec. Pardon?
I didn't say anything.
Oh, okay. I thought, well, in Quebec, I think it was popular, but I know that in English Ontario, dear heavens, it never caught on. And maybe it's different in Alberta or something. They have a different culture from English Ontario. I'm pretty suspicious that in the Maritimes, they probably had their radio dramas. The Maritimes are different. They're much more Irish, and they're much more connected, like Quebec is, to Europe. And the U.S., I know, I've heard from some friends in the U.S. that radio dramas are making a comeback. I don't know if that's true in your corner, in your neck of the
Yes,
woods.
there is a big push for audio is making a big thing, not just for podcasts, but for dramas as means of entertainment. And there is a sort of a nostalgia for the radio spirits or radio dramas of that era, of the old era.
I've heard quite a bit about that.
Well, here, no. I'm just replying to someone. I think that what we could use is, what I'd like is if it would catch on even in the Great White North, but I don't know if it will. Like I said, I'm pretty sure, now I'm not really connected to the French news these days because most of it is politics driven. And I would like it if it moved more into literature and whatnot. But the trouble is that that's its own thing. Or it's about music. Dear heavens, French radio is obsessed with music, whether it's American or French or even Japanese or classical. But the problem is nothing of literature, which is weird because France was once king of literature in the 19th century. But on the other hand, Quebec is very much a film-centric province and area. Big movie productions and whatnot. Big.
And growing.
Yep. And the films that are coming out are great quality stuff. Même avec France. Even France is developing some great films in cinema. But the thing is, audio is dying, really. So that's something that I actually think you Americans are wise to turn to. And I think that I actually prefer that. As I'm getting older, I find I prefer audio stuff, like audio dramas, audio books. Now, I do like to have the book in front of me and read it myself, but I also like a good audio drama. I just prefer the audio stuff because I could do other things like writing or reading another book while I listen to one book, or I can draw and work on the animation for Sattertoons, my friend's animation company that I sometimes part-time for, and just focus on that stuff. But the trouble is, everything with French culture is entirely visual these days. And I think it could use a bit more audio. One sec. And the thing is, I think, on the other hand, that said, I think that your one sec. Somebody's just asking about admission into the event. And it's like what are the? That's a funny thing. I only laugh or snort because it's just people keep wondering. Okay, what are the rules? Surely there's some rule against me joining. Why? Why would I keep you out? I'm not here to kick people out or anything. I don't think I have the authority or any authority to do so. And the only reason I don't think of myself as having any authority is because, like, the thing about Substack is that when you're on there, and if you're writing fantasy and whatnot there, you have, it's a very, I don't know if you've experienced this, Tom, but it's very dynamic. Like, you gotta, it's like you're throwing ball. Like, you're throwing the ball at the other guy, he catches it back at you. The thing is, you never really have, like, especially with these sort of events, absolute power. And I'm hosting, but I'm hosting these events, but like I gotta run things by you, Man Behind the Screen, TS Bowl, even Gargle sometimes. Like I gotta run it by everyone. And yeah, so I just got asked by someone if they could be included, and I just simply always say sure. The only thing I insist on is let's try to honor legacy stuff like in traditions and chivalry and have stories like that. Whoop. There. But the thing is, there. Person's going to post it soon. That said, your essay also has a comment about film, TV, and others. Yeah, we're probably years away from that sort of stuff.
That's down the road. That's just an example.
Yeah. Like we both know that's way down the road. And, that tastes like garbage. Anyways, sorry, my drink. But it's just I've had 2 milkshakes today. It's like, yeah, those tasted like great. Those tasted great. The hot chocolate tasted great. This bit of caffeine, and it's like, eh. Anyways, the proposal is a good one. I actually thought this was very rock solid. And wait, I thought I had shared it just as a restack. There, 8 restacks. This is something that I think has a lot of possibilities. And on my end, my Substack is growing, and I'm noticing others like Man Behind the Screen are growing rapidly as well. And same with TS Bowl. And the thing is, many of us who are fantasy writers on Substack, such as yourself, Tom, well, many of us are growing. And more and more, I'm noticing people are reaching the 100 benchmark. I've reached 200 and 3 paid subscribers, which yay. Thank you. And the thing is, I think that we're only going to keep going up. And the thing is, let's say man behind the screen overtakes me. Well, there's a lot of cross-pollination across all of our platforms. But the thing is, with each one of us growing, and each growing by 100 or so, this is only going to help everyone, and we're only going to keep going up. And if we keep gaining and growing platform-wise, like, we got only one place to go. And
Yeah.
I think if that's the case, well, this sort of thing about getting it in physical media, which physical media is making a big comeback after basically disappearing during the 2010s.
Yeah, those were dark days if you're a fan of a physical book.
Yeah, and dark days if you're a fan of physical movies and other things. But I think with physical media making a comeback, I think it's only natural to expand this Substack event. And I also think given the number of people who are expanding, like, I thought my prompt was just what the heck, 10 to 20,000 words. Well, people are taking that and saying, well, can't I go over, like, higher or larger and write just a full book? And they're doing that. They're writing, it's not that I'm still a short story. No, I think they're probably going to turn into a set of anthologies. But they're now turning towards writing full-on books. And that's what we want. But for the short stories, like, for example, if Warrior Wednesday was to become a magazine, a physical magazine or something, or a PDF magazine, like where you pay in and once a month you can download it, that'd probably be easier, because Richard from Iron Age Media has lost money on the Anvil magazine. And has only, like he told me, him and Daniel, a few times, that they've lost money. And the thing is that, but if the PDF form costs them nothing. So, like, you open up a magazine like this with all these stories, with people paying into, for, like, some of these stories later, or like other stories. These like the Substack ones, you can clearly see. But what if we've got other stories and, those go into the magazine? Well, at that point, you're paying in, and it's, and the fund goes straight to paying for proper publication for each book. That'll change the game a little.
There's a reason why, for example, I know this wasn't short stories, but I remember Nintendo Power.
Yeah.
They went crash because they did not do the transition to online.
Yeah.
And they no longer could publish the magazines. So that killed Nintendo Power.
Yeah.
And that said, I should probably reopen that tab. Whoops. Now, well, don't worry, folks, for those who are more interested in Conan talks and such, we'll get to that in a minute. You have to, because I'm a little under the weather, and we don't have as many stories as on Wednesday, I think. Thank heavens. Now, I do like to see this grow. I am enjoying that aspect, but on the other hand, there was a lot of stories, and I don't know, because I think we had 12 stories. That was a lot. We went from 6 to 12. We doubled.
And that goes to show that there are a lot of writers out there, who want.
And honestly, if we end up doubling from 12 to 24, that's great. The only thing is it makes it difficult when I'm trying to review because it takes so much time. And collecting them all, you got to chase after people. You got to remember to tag them. You got to do a lot and whatnot. And collecting these posts usually takes me all day, or at least a good chunk of the day.
Well, here's a thought. I was going to say, here's a thought. If we continue to grow and it becomes, we could always go from once or twice a month instead of every week. Like at the once at the beginning of the month and at the end of the month.
Yeah.
That way.
Though at present, I think it's better. Though
better what?
It's better to have it every week. The only reason I think right now it's good for every week is we're all getting steady growth from this. And so long as we have the steady growth, we're good. Now, what I think we should do is down the road, we should do what you suggest, Tom. Did I break up there?
About a moment ago before, but I caught your last sentence. Yes.
All right. Well, all I meant was we're getting steady growth from this every week, so we should probably keep it up for a while every week. But I think once we reach a certain size, it might be good to do as you suggested, especially since a lot of us are transitioning in life and going in different directions, and all prone to, from what I've talked to a few of them, we're all about to get pretty busy. So that's where, But on the other hand,
that was what suggested the monthly thing too.
Yeah, I think that down the road that would be wise, and you're on to something. But for now, while we have the time, we should use it to grow these platforms, because we're only profiting from this right now. And and like I for one really do enjoy these events.
I do too.
Just it's just I also find sometimes I find it tiring just because tracking stuff down, and on the other hand constantly restacking and whatnot. But it's also tiring because I've been in job training all week, so by the time I get to it, I'm pretty tired already. But on the positive side, it's awesome seeing all these indie fantasy stories cropping up, growing, and whatnot. And shoot, I just remembered I forgot Josh.
You forgot what?
How can Josh? I got Josh Tater. He's probably my favorite of the group. I just stories, and I let me see. 1 second. There, I'll just ask him real quick. I hope I got read off. Anyway, just messaged him. Anyways, he's got to be feeling annoyed down for him twice. I forget everyone's names. But anyways, I have one friend who said that's because you're getting old. You're
you're kind of breaking up there again.
Steadily. Crap. Stupid internet. Can you turn off your phone's internet? 1 second. Let me turn off internet on my phone. Am I connected here? Oh no, it's already turned off. All right. Let's go over these stories and then we'll move on to Conan talk.
Yes.
Amber has a story in the mines. Now I really like this title. It's simple. It reminds me of Tolkien in a way, because Tolkien would come up with like the long expected party, an unexpected party, and you know what to expect. And I'm not a fan of the Game of Thrones series, But what I like, kind of that. Okay, one thing Martin did was the traditions of Robert E. Howard, and the thing that Martin in titles is Martin's actually good at titles. Now, I'll just give a few titles from Howard: The Phoenix on the Sword, The Hour of the Black Colossus, and then Martin, A Game of Thrones, A War of the Crows. Well, these are
You're
great
breaking
titles,
up there again.
but they're more. Damn. All right. The Martin thing is that the thing about Martin and Howard is that they have these complicated titles: Game of Thrones, Dragon, a Storm of Swords, Colossus, things like this. And the truth is that no fancy writer anymore harkens back to Tolkien's sense of simple. Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, The Silmarillion. These are very simple titles. And I think that Harold here did something great and very clever. Just kept it simple. Into the Mines. No need for complex titles. And no need for more dramatic titles when you can just keep them. So I do approve of that. Catherine has chapter 3. Her previous chapter was great. I really liked it. Chapter 1, I was like, enjoy.
Chapter 2 was
and
good.
Chapter 3, oh yeah. Chapter 2 was really good.
I haven't read chapter 3
I did not like
good.
The only thing I've tried to learn about is her character, and it's just okay. I hope people will not. When you look at Sweet Boy, you find Julian's picture next to this, and now I've met men who are a little more effeminate, and actually enjoy coffee with them, hang out, and play D&D with them. And honestly, while there's a whole stereo of them, a lot of men like that.
You're really breaking out pretty bad there. Could hardly make you out again. Sorry.
No problem. Here, let me try something. I wonder if it'll help. He can't.
All right.
Can you close up for thing and close up all other internet stuff? Can you hear us, Tom?
I can hear you a little bit in pieces, but I'll keep talking if that's all right. In the meantime,
No problem.
while you're
Well,
from...
okay. What I meant to say was that the thing about this
do you want me to talk for a while?
Here, I'll try this. All right. Can you hear me?
You're still in and out.
Oh, if you go take a look at that and then look downstairs, I think it's a iPad. It's called Internet Data. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Just what I can hear you say. I can hear you.
All right. I meant to say that while there's a certain stereotype. There's a certain.
Yeah, folks, I apologize. First and foremost, looks like we lost Joe and Dan again, and he's just been having some Wi-Fi connection issues. And it is part of Canada, where they're having some weather issues right now, and I'll keep on the best I can. In the meantime, let me get up the newsletter itself. Just give me a moment. Apologize. I should have had that up from the get-go. I'm working from my phone at the same time too, so sometimes it all right.
Can you hear?
Hardly make you out.
Am I breaking up?
I heard you right there.
The internet's trying to be terrible. Here, I'm just closing tabs. Let me see. Needed tabs, I mean, closing. Let's see.
You're breaking up again. I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize. It's okay. Not your fault. I'm just closing up a mass of tabs that are sucking in more data as needed. Let's see. What was this?
You want me to talk while you're about it while you're
Okay. But okay. It seems like our internet is just trying to be bad. Sorry. Anyway, the thing I meant to say is that Julian does not seem like a strong lead. That is my only concern, as every chapter thus far has had the character burst into tears. And the reason I'm rather, like, the reason I suggested that there should be a Conan or Aragorn type character is that what we need is a positive figure of masculinity in Catherine's story. She's a talented writer, but the thing is, she's writing a male character like he's a female character, as Dan always complains about this sort of thing with female writers. Now, I'm not knocking female writers. Like, people know I have a fondness for Margaret Weiss and a fondness for many other female writers. The thing is, Catherine is talented. She was not keen on that criticism and said Julian, the character, will grow into things. He will have character development. But does it really matter to an extent? Like, I just find he's a shadow archetype. He's a deconstruction of a male character. Like, the closest we can compare him to, I would argue, is Ted Mosby. But Ted Mosby was a lover archetype character whom we saw him cry, but Ted did not cry very often. He was a strong, inspiring character and a very paternalistic one in a positive sense. I hope are you able to hear me right now?
Yes, you're loud and clear. I should have said something. You're good.
Oh, okay. I was very nervous there. Now, don't get me wrong. If Catherine is able to have this character grow really well, great. Now, what's interesting is that I'm going to use an example that people often misunderstand as a weak male character, but who's actually in the manga a superhuman, like he's a character I would compare to Clark Kent in a way, in terms of being an aspirational hero and a freaking powerhouse, and that is Mamoru, or Tuxedo Mask, or Tuxedo Kamen. In the manga, he sword fights, he uses more magical power at one point than Sailor Moon, he saves the day. But the thing is, what the writer liked to do was, in one arc, he would be the damsel, then in the next one, he'd be the hero, and Sailor Moon would be the damsel. So she tended to have the two switch roles that way. And the thing about this is that her character Stella is great. Rufus is a great villain, but I just think there's a difference between Mamoru or Samwise as male characters who seem at first glance lesser, but are actually more than their appearances. And my concern here, we've had Julian burst into tears in 2 chapters. So that's where, like, it's just, that's my only complaint about her story. And the only concern I have. Now, if there are people saying, well, male characters should cry, I'm actually going to disagree and say I don't think they should, except in the most extreme circumstance. Like, there's a difference between Camille Bidon or Amuro Ray, who in their war dramas crying as they give into PTSD, or Samwise crying because he fears for Frodo's life. That's dealing with death. That's
like, I'll give you one example right there. Well, I wasn't happy with the Daniel Craig Bond films because it seemed like he was crying all the time about something.
Yeah.
Whereas before that, James Bond only cried at the ending of Honor Majesty's Secret Service when his wife was killed by Blofeld.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
And it was just a tear.
Yeah. And the other thing with James Bond is we have to bear in mind, he fell in love with one woman in one of the Pierce Brosnan films and then murdered her in front of her surrogate mother, cold-bloodedly, and didn't care. So Bond is supposed to be a pretty bloodthirsty, ruthless guy. And like I said, I really like Catherine's story, and I really do hope the story keeps progressing and keeps going forward. I did encourage her, but I just voiced concerns. And she also claimed that she felt Conan and Aragorn would be out of place, and that their characters who are already at the end of the character development, they can't get character development or something to that effect. And I'm like, no, their entire stories in Lord of the Rings and Hour of the Dragon is character development. And Conan, arguably, if you read The Elephant Tower and then read The Hour of the Dragon, how much has he had? But on the other hand, she did make a good case for the fact that you do need to start the male character, or any character really, at the beginning of the journey, not at the end. And you need to have them develop into the character you want them to be. So she does make a good argument in that regard.
But I heard one writer that said, if you write, make sure to have friends, relatives, or fellow writers of the opposite gender screen through your character of the opposite gender to make sure that you're getting into that state of mind.
Yeah.
Because if, for example, you have
now, I agree. I'm just going to make one argument. Now, arguably, I mean, no offense, I've got a few female proofreaders. 2 of them really love fantasy. Now, I'm going to say, on the other hand, I have 1 or 2 friends who are female who don't like fantasy. The non-fantasy friends I have, if you were to put Valyria under their nose, they would just be like, not aghast, but like, I would never read that, would be their response. So when I write, for example, Sigrun from my Darkspire novel, I have to walk a very tight rope. And like, that's where I'm like, yeah, okay. But I understand it's difficult with that. On the other hand, like Valyria, I think Gosha, your one badass.
Yeah, the my Western thing.
Yeah, I think she's a female lead, correct?
No,
I'm-
Gosha is a male, actually, a guy.
Okay. My bad. Okay, I thought it was a female. Well, the thing is, the action girl appeals more to men. And I'm going to say this. That's just the nature of the game. But on the other hand, now when I talk to one of my female proofreaders, actually two of them who are both fantasy fans, the action girl does appeal to them. So there are women whom it appeals to. And it's just, I do think, on the other hand, too many writers forget to do what Dan suggested. And so I've got two fantasy fan proofreaders for a few of my stories. And I've got some non-ones. And I just think it's a tightrope. And I'm not judging Catherine here. It's a really tightrope. But I also think us male proofreaders, we're guys. We'll naturally like Stella. But this sensitive Julian character. Now, I've got a guy friend. I say guy friend like I'm a girl. Fuck. Sorry, I shouldn't F-bomb. But, okay, I got a buddy called... I can't even use his name. He'd probably be annoyed. Well, anyways, I got a friend. On the one hand, at first glance, he would be the like people would probably like raise their fist, might sneer at him and say, "Oh, he's a soy boy." But actually, the dude does have a pretty macho side deep down as well. Like he is left leaning. He loves his. He does like some soy drinks. Sorry, one sec. But he's nerdy. He collects anime action figures. But this is also the same guy who loves the bloody scenes in Macbeth and Game of Thrones. And this guy loves the bloodiest scenes in Yu Yu Hakusho. He is also a horror fan. He's like, oh, I think I need to be sensitive to a girl. But if she doesn't like to see blood, guts, and horror on the screen, why would I ever date her? So, like, this friend of ours, like, sometimes we're like, oh, you were so cringe, buddy. But then other times we're like, you are so awesome. So that's the thing. Like, we must never forget that men are men. Like,
Yeah.
even the most, even in my opinion, the most effeminate guy will have a lot of masculine interests and masculinity to him because it's just coded into our DNA to like things like, I don't know, fast cars. Nah, not really for me. I don't like fast cars, but to like things like lions, tigers, Conan, horror. It's kind of in our DNA, although there are guys who don't like horror for legitimate reasons. But anyways, my point is we're very different creatures.
Even speech patterns come out naturally.
In a certain way. And Julian, like I said, there's just something, I think she needs a male reader for this. But you know what? If she has a certain vision, I want to see it unfold a little more because you can't really, okay, in my opinion, I'm playing devil's advocate here. We got to bear in mind, she stated she has a certain vision. You never interfere with the director's vision until like a certain point. In this case, with books, I find you need to wait at least 100 pages. Like before you, like, we don't know, like it's like a TV series where it's like, let's say a 22 episode season or 26 episode season, and you're interfering at like episode 1. No, you got to wait at least 5 to 6 episodes. Now, if it's something like an 8 to 12 stupid modern thing of, oh, well, we'll only have 12 or 8 episode seasons, which is ridiculous. Go full 26 or 50 episodes like Japan does. Japan has 100, like has hour-long episodes to hour-and-a-half long episodes and 50 episode seasons. They know what's up. But, or 60 episode seasons like Korea. and all episodes are like an hour to an hour and a half. Go Korea. But anyways,
Yeah, here in the States, we're pretty much going down to 8 or 10 now, especially after the strike.
yeah, it's about probably going to eventually go down to 4. Anyways,
Oh, God.
yeah. But the thing is, my point here is, much as I'm complaining, we have to defend Catherine's decision. We don't know what she's got in mind.
For
Yeah,
all
it's-
we know,
The point is, it's too soon to make final judgment on the story because we probably haven't even reached that 100-page point like you mentioned.
We're probably only at like 16 pages. So
Exactly.
So on the other hand, I really like Stella.
Yeah. I
like
didn't read chapter 3 yet. I read the first 2 chapters.
I only read
But-
2.
Oh, it's very well written. Her prose,
Oh yeah, it's so good.
it's kind of reminiscent of a Moorcock or Howard.
Well, if I was to describe it, I would actually say she's not quite like Howard. I'll actually make a weird comparison. It's like mixing Harper Lee from To Kill a Mockingbird or even the writer who wrote In Her Shoes, which is a pretty good book, who writes in a very feminine style, with Howard. Now, this is like Catherine was a female Howard with all the tendencies of female writers, and with also the inclinations of one and the views of one. And here's the thing about female writers. I'm going to voice something a little weird. I don't think a man could have ever written To Kill a Mockingbird or In Her Shoes. I don't think a man could have ever written those stories because they're written in a way that you can tell the writer is female, but they're very good stories. Like Jean Fitzroy is one of my favorite French novels in the past 30 years. And it is such, like, you can tell the writer is female. And that's the thing. Like, Catherine's a woman when you read her book. And there's a strength to female literature, just as there is to male literature. There's a virtue to it. And like the first novel in history was written by Shikibu Murasaki in Japan. And it is very much a psychological thriller, but also a romance novel. And it is so good. But only a woman could have written it. No man could write like that, in that particular style, and with that kind of thinking in mind, the way she does. And I don't know if this is the right word, but there's a sensitivity to female literature that's very particular. Whereas there's a harshness and there's a sorrow to male literature. And those are two of the differences between the two sexes when they write. And like, I don't know what you think of my view there, if I'm rambling or...
Oh, you make some very interesting points that I never thought of that I think are really good to point out.
Yeah, and I think she will go far. I think she is a brilliant writer.
And if I recall too, she said isn't this part 1 of a trilogy?
Oh, good for her. Good for her. I hope so.
Because when I spoke to her, she mentioned she has a trilogy, but I'm not sure if this is her character for the trilogy. But if it is, this is really the prose.
Yep. Next, we have The Black Knight. And yes, 'tis only a flesh wound, according to him. He has a Sword and Planet story, which I believe that's like John Carter's Barsoom series.
Yes,
right?
Yes, it's a similar vein.
The Valen the Lothorian. Now, I included this because he's a pretty friendly chap, and though it's sci-fi, I figured why not make an exception, because I really like him. Him and I chat for hours. I really like him. Although I should probably spend those hours elsewhere. Well, I actually say I chat for hours, but it's like between composing a poem for Wednesday's Warrior Wednesday and that. We have Red Oscar. Red Oscar's really talented. I've only read one of his stories. He's really good. I liked Red Oscar. His dwarf story was really good. We've got Jolan Hildebrandt. He wrote all Oliver Luck. He has a cartoony thumbnail I did like. And we have, of course, Man Behind the Screen, who submitted The Claws of the Nlongu, Chapter 2, which Chapter 1 was really brilliant. Chapter 1 was quite good. And was very Howardian. And let me see. But I find that Man Behind the Screen is someone who, if I had to make a guess, I'd say him and Josh are probably the most experienced writers. After Ben something, because I only say Ben something because his name. What is it? Ben Westenberg, or is it Vestenberg?
Wostenberg, I think.
Oh, okay. Wostenberg.
If we're butchering your name, we apologize, Ben.
Yeah, just my gosh, said no. This name, it's those Germanic Slavic names and whatnot that just I will never pronounce them right. I wish I could, but I will never pronounce them right. Sadly. And I say that with all the affection in the world. I've got one friend from Germany who's a mentor, and I met him through YouTube, and we're now pen pals. And I very much say he's a mentor because he is. But my gosh, like his name and half of the names like places he's been or whatever, I could not pronounce to save my life. It is hilarious, and I just find it really funny because of that. And we have also T.S. Bowl, who has submitted a story called The Path, a short story, and a continuation of his other one. I got to add this one. You see, they tend to come in even as we're streaming, and I typically add them after the stream so that I'm not busy scrambling at the screen. And we have someone. Oh, wow, Siva. Who's just made a comment about sword and sorcery. Basically a fan of sword and sorcery, just getting excited and squealing. So we encourage a lot of squealing here.
So long as I'm not in the same room.
Well, usually it's the dog who squeals.
Well, that's acceptable if the dog.
Yeah. And I'm just skimming through my notification bell out here. All right. And we've got another story from Josh. Okay. His is called The Highland Hero. My computer's lagging. Yeah. So I'll add them after the stream because, yeah. I only say yeah because there's a lot of people whom I forget or who join in as we're going. And honestly, yeah. But as far as this story, it's apparently, I think, supposed to be an African tribe thing. And I thought that's cool. It reminds me of Solomon Kane and Conan. Or at least maybe not Conan, but Cole. And Conan. Oh, yeah, actually, Conan met some characters with names like this. So, yeah. My story is Chute d'innocence, le prologue. La Prologue de Chute d'Innocence. This is a story I was working on years and years and years ago. And honestly, I just finally put it through a great breaking up, aren't I?
I can hear you fine.
Okay. Well, this story is a darker fantasy of mine, but the story was always meant to be. It's the entire draft is written, but the thing is, I wanted to find a French editor to help fix up the sentences and whatnot, so I put it through instead a really, really good French grammar AI, but I still don't feel that's enough. Meh. As it is, I'm hoping to later down the road go back in for some French grammar courses and get a BA maybe in that, if only because there's a lot of places you can teach French with just a BA, teaching people French as a second language, that is. And if I have a BA in French grammar and French literature with a minor in maybe education, I could probably teach in most places. But
good.
And it would help me improve my French grammar. So why go to an editor when you can become one? But the thing is, the story was meant to be a French Pillars of the Earth, except in a fantasy setting. And I don't know if you're familiar with Pillars of the Earth.
I'm familiar with Ken Fogg. He's referred to as a sort of a champagne socialist, as they call him.
Yeah, he is. But his Pillars of the Earth book is his magnum opus, and it's a spectacular novel that is also, funny enough, one of those books where it is one of the biggest arguments for faith and belief in God you will ever find. And it is so chock full of religiosity. It is hilarious. You would think it was written by a Christian from the early 20th century who's trying to proselytize to people. And it is so Catholic, a novel, so pro-Catholic in my opinion, it is actually actively hilarious. Like, it reads almost like, when you realize how, he has socialist tendencies, you find it funny. But on the other hand, Ken Follett, what I like about him as a person is that he's a Francophile. So I have a soft spot for that. Most people in England are Francophiles at this point, in my experience. And that's the funny thing. A lot of the Anglosphere are full of Francophilia. But the thing is, though, with my novel, though, it was kind of, I wrote it to be dark and a bit of a counter response, but also, rather than it just being about the building of a cathedral, it's about the building of maybe a castle or two, and basically more about the idea of redemption, with each of the characters having made a grave mistake or error in their lives and having to try to atone for it, or they fall further into temptation and never quite veer away. And it ultimately is both a tragedy but also a triumph of the human soul. But there's also, for example, one character who believes he is not redeemed. And so I had a follow-up epic poem about this character trying to find redemption. But yeah, the thing is, and it was going to be the prologue of full saga, a full French saga, which was going to be a anti-Game of Thrones of sorts, with politics and whatnot, but with the triumph of good versus evil, and over a major Dark Lord type who only appears slowly as part of a murder mystery that starts to unravel over the course of several books. But even then, it was basically a world building series for me, where I'd be able to world build all the details that are in my later books in this series. But I stopped writing after a while, couldn't build a French platform, and on top of that, couldn't find an editor. But now I'm plugging back into it, and I'm going to fix it up and just treat it as me publishing drafts as I work through them and correct them and change them. Why not do it that way? Now,
Yeah.
kind of like what it's basically, okay, your Primarian age and you working through all those drafts that you sent me, like of your essay, your various proposals, you working through various drafts of your other stories has kind of pushed me to decide, you know what, I should do this.
Really?
Yeah, I figured, you know what, I want to do French content and I want to push forward my French projects. I should just do it.
Yeah, by all means. And just
It's
to let
not-
you know, on Primarian, I'm doing another pass at the world again. I'm trying to blending it with Japanese Civil War and
Okay. Well, the draft you sent me of the essay was quite good.
well, the mythos will be the same, but I'm gonna simplify the world a bit.
All right. Can only help, I guess. I think it could. We have to remember as writers that, well, we want complexity. Complexity is built slowly. It is one building block set up on top of one another. Like, okay, Tolkien's world began with the story of Earendel and really the story of Gondolin at the start. Then you had the tale of Baron Luthien that was also added over time, and the Children of Húrin. But then Tolkien scrapped a lot of the initial drafts, changed things and whatnot, and then began restarting and redoing things. But then he published The Hobbit. And this was the founding building block of the Middle Earth universe. And then, you know, like Lord of the Rings, we think of as so complex, so detailed and whatnot. But we have to bear in mind, it was written one little bit at a time, one chapter at a time. And Tolkien took his time. It took him years. And
Yes.
what's more is that his first drafts were all garbage. I've read his first drafts. They're some of the worst writing I've ever seen in my life. And you got to bear in mind that's inspiring in a way, because if Tolkien had nothing but really terrible drafts at the start, and you look at the end product, so to speak, that's inspiring. How far can we go? And the other factor is that he built his universe slowly. He rewrote the Silmarillion a bunch of times, but he rebuilt it one story at a time. And Christopher did that. Christopher did not just go, oh, let's go with all these stories. He went with, okay, let's start at the beginning. What was at the beginning? Well, Eru, the one. Okay, let's go from there. What's the next story? And when it came to restructuring the Silmarillion and putting together all the different strands, Christopher did it one tale at a time and relied on his assistants as well. There's no shame in going slow. And Howard, now I'm going to argue, Howard blazed forward, and struck like lightning. He built quick. He built quick. But that's after he tried to build Cull real quick and face planted. Now his Cull stories are really good, but then you get to some of his other, well, he did have some terrible drafts though. Like, I read a few of them and I was horrified by a few of the drafts, but others I really loved. But the thing is, Howard built Cull slow, then gave up, built Solomon Kane, gave up on him, went to Conan. And Conan, he built him one story at a time, but he blazed with nothing but, for the most part, great stories. But even there, it's built one block at its time. This is the way with literature, especially with mythology epics. They are built one stone at a time. And you look at, you also look at, like, for example, he was able to build Hour of the Dragon, which is an amazing read.
Oh yeah.
But you got to bear in mind, he did so one sentence, one chapter, one paragraph at a time. And he filled it with pathos. That's one thing I also noticed. Modern writers are scared of pathos. Don't be. Lean into your pathos. And
for the audience that are watching and that aren't familiar with the word pathos, define the word pathos.
All right. I'll need the definition of it before me. It's one of those things. It's a quality that evokes. Okay, it says here, appeals to the emotions and ideals of the audience and elicits feelings that already reside in them. But pathos is meant to evoke an extreme of an emotion, really. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's very extreme. Like, for example, episode 3, contrary to some of the sci-fi fans I have on Substack, Star Wars was really well written by George Lucas. And the thing is, we got to bear in mind, the whole of episode 3 is filled with pathos. The extreme emotions of Anakin and even Obi-Wan are there displayed on the screen, and even in the music. You feel everything that they feel. The sense of betrayal and rage and the pain is right there, especially at the end of the movie. Just as, for example, the scene where Luke takes the helmet off of Vader. There's pathos in that scene, and you are filled with compassion, horror, and pity for Anakin. And you realize it's been hell for him on some level. And that contained somewhere deep within the layers of the evil Vader, there was Anakin the boy still there, screaming to try to break out. And once you realize that Anakin was in there the whole time, screaming, crying, trying to break free, you're filled with nothing but pity for him. And you realize why Luke is so great. Luke saved Anakin from himself. And that's important. And I think that, on the other hand, one writer who excelled at pathos was Howard, for example. And let's segue over to Howard completely. And the thing with Howard, for example, in his Hour of the Dragon, there's pathos there. There's a lot of extreme. You really feel the emotions, for example, of despair, just as you do with Tolkien, when it seems like all is lost, such as when the kingdom is seemingly destroyed. But where you are, for example, how shall I put it? I even think that there's a sweetness, a beauty, and something just awe-inspiring about Zenobia's love confession to Conan. Now, I saw someone online recently say, yeah, I didn't think much of it, whatever. No, but like, that's basically the heart of the story. Everything Conan does after that moment is done as much to rescue his newfound people, the Aquilonians, as it is Zenobia. Because we have to bear in mind, what is the last line in Hour of the Dragon?
I don't have my book with me, but it was
about her.
It was all about. It had to do with Zenobia but he had to go fetch his queen.
Yeah. Now let me crack open the French edition, because it's basically the same except in French. I have the French one on hand, and it's easier to just sift through this. Yes. In Numidia, she was a slave, but I will make her queen back alone, or something to that effect, because in the French, which is say, I will make her queen of Aquilonia. But the whole story of Hour of the Dragon is a chivalric epic. It's written in a style and in a spirit more akin to a novel from England, because Howard was trying to pitch it to an English audience. And this sort of chivalric epic was something that the English at the time and still today can, I think, better understand than, in a way, in a certain context, than, say, To Kill a Mockingbird. Because, like, for example, I'm just going to say, like, black rights. That was resolved in England and Scotland in around 1793 to 1800, thereabouts. Like, it's not even a blip on the radar, at least culturally, for the longest time. I'm not going to get into today's culture war and whatnot, not on this front. But the thing is, for a long time, that was already a resolved issue with England for 200 years now. What do they care? But when it comes to chivalric epics and the romance from southern France, stories of, let's say, Ivanhoe, those still ring across the years in England. We got to bear in mind, Tolkien had a massive audience in England. His Lord of the Rings was immediately popular out there. So Howard, I think, was trying to tap that audience in a way. And for example, one comment I just saw was, Conan is a pagan hero, not a Christian one. But here's the thing, Howard was a Christian.
Yeah.
That is an important integral detail I think the person forgot. Well, his world is non-pagan. Yes, it is it is not a Christian world. But the thing is, if you look at Mitra, you look at Conan championing love and the right action and chivalry,
or just look at the difference between Mitra and Set, the faiths of those two religions. It's like Mitra's Christianity and Set is like literally the Church of Satan.
Yeah, and there's such a dichotomy there. But like I said, it's just, you look at the ethics of Conan, like just the honor about him of no violating women or children, no selling slaves, no owning slaves, no, like a lot of these things, he's very much a Christian hero. But in Hour of the Dragon, he's much more so one. And arguably, he is the same character in there that Aragorn is in Lord of the Rings, just two different writers. Aragorn Elisar is fighting for Arwen and his kingdom. Conan is fighting for Zenobia and his kingdom. They have the same motivation. They're different characters, yes, but they're the same archetype. And the thing is, Howard knew his audience. Like, he had captured the Texan audience, let's be honest, with Conan. He did not know if he had captured England. So what he needed to do with England was go at it a different way. Now, he needed to keep the same stuff that had captured Texas and the US, but he also needed to include things that England loved. And what does England love? Well, England loves chivalric epics. So the thing is, like, Howard is writing in a fashion that, like, no offense, but how shall I describe it? I don't think, for example, Tracy Hickman would write exactly.
No.
And Tracy Hickman writes for an American audience, and more power to him. I like his style. I love his stories, but he writes for an American audience, and you can feel it. There is a chivalric element, but it's very muted. Howard was writing very much for an English audience with Hour of the Dragon, so there is that major difference. And the thing about Conan's last line there, we got to bear in mind, in the classic stories of Conan, in the timeline, this is the last line we ever hear Conan utter. Yes, I know Red Nails comes afterwards, but if you're reading the stories in chronological order, the last thing Conan will ever say is how he will make Zenobia his queen. And if you include the pastiches, you know that she becomes mother to his children, namely Khan, or King Conan II. So
And we
Zenobia,
know that his dynasty ends up ruling for like how many years? Like three to 500 years or some before Gorn comes along and destroys everything.
yeah, yeah, that's a few centuries later. And the thing about Zenobia, though, is now I'm not trying to push that we read this as a romantic Jane Austen style story. No, nor should we read it as How I Met Your Mother, where it's a journey to him becoming worthy of Zenobia. It's the story of Conan's life. But on the other hand, yes, in Hour of the Dragon, it's him becoming the king who is worthy of Zenobia. But on the other hand, in that context, if the thing is, Zenobia thinks he is just the ultimate man, like he is he is all a man can be and should be. She worships him and reveres him in a way, and yet sees his warts and all and loves him in every way imaginable. It is the perfect love. And the thing is, Conan is moved and awed by this because not even Baelit or Valyria quite loved him like this in such an all encompassing way. And for Conan, who's never experienced this sort of love, this is a moving experience. This is like a religious experience. He comes out of it a very different man. And we have to bear in mind, he was at his lowest right before this. So he hits rock bottom, and then the most beautiful woman he's ever met comes along and confesses she's always loved him. That's going to affect a man.
Yeah.
And to say, well, it's not very important to the story. No, this is the story. And this is a story because it's about, if she believes Conan is such a great king, it's like the Beauty and the Beast. You know, Belle believes in Adam. She believes in the beast. She loves him. She sees that he's more than just this beast. And what does he decide to do? He wants to change. He's like, she loves me even though I'm like this. I need to be better. It's not that the woman changes the man, it's that she inspires the man to change. And that's important. Like Aragorn, for example, when he first meets Arwen, she kind of makes fun of him. Maybe not sneers at him, but she looks down on him a little. She's like, "You're just a teenage boy." But the thing is, Aragorn decides, you know what? I'm not going to let her. Like, I want her to look at me and see a man, not a boy. So later, when she next meets him, she's like, "Wow, are you the same guy?" Like, not in those words, but she's like, "Wow." And Aragorn's like, "Yeah." And I want to be the man. I want her to see me as a man and as the kind of way that Zenobia sees Conan. And Aragorn decides to transform himself, and he does. And the thing is, really, love is about compromising everything for the one you love. Let's be honest. Oh, don't compromise yourself. No, that's not true. We all know we're going to compromise everything for the one we love. To do less is basically to say they aren't worth it. And if the other person isn't worth it, why should they compromise at all for you?
Yeah, exactly.
But on the other hand, I think we also got to bear in mind, much as Howard loved his Norse sagas and his pagan literature, he also loved his chivalry stories.
Yeah.
And I have not researched a great deal into Howard's romance with Noelle, the love of his life, but from what I read up, and when I read a bit of the stories World of Conan sent me about their romance, mostly little comic strips about them, and a few notes and quotes here and there. Wow, was Howard chivalrous towards her. He, like, the the stereotype about Texan men being chivalrous towards their women and being cowboys for them was true of Howard. And the thing is, Howard really, really went out of his way for her, and was apparently, from what I read up, very in awe of her. He adored her, but sometimes she was a little rude to him or dismissive. Now, she did love him and worship him, but, well, not worship him, but like she did adore him. But on the other hand, she took him for granted sometimes, from what World of Conan told me, because he read, I think, her biography. And on the other hand, Howard never really took her for granted and treated her like she was made of ivory. So we know Howard was a deeply passionate man and one who loved Noelle and adored her. And if love was such an important role in his life, we do have to look at his literature through that lens. And we do have to bear that in mind. And I think also, if he loved chivalry and believed in these ideals, even as he believed that the uncivilized man was better than the civilized man, and Conan is supposed to represent this ideal, then we do need to read his stories with that in mind. And if you look at, for example, the three main love interests that are popular, they're popular for a reason. And Baelit, I would argue, is an adolescent love. It's mostly lust and whatnot, and there is some genuine meeting of the minds there. But the trouble is, it was always doomed from the start. You look at the romance with Valyria. That's very passionate, but it's clear that's the first adult love. But it's not the final one. It's not the final one. The final girl, so to speak, is Zenobia. And I just find it interesting
saying things come in threes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not, like, for example, my favorite of the female lead of Howard, at least I've not read Dark Ang, but my favorite is so far Valyria. But I am conscious of the fact that Zenobia is the final girl. Like, it will always be Zenobia. And this is where some Howard fans and some writers who hate on Zenobia, I don't understand, because to me it's, well, why? She's, the ideal. She's, like, really what we should be doing is elevating her. She is the perfect divine feminine. Really, she's the archetype who got the man. We shouldn't resent that or think it boring, because World of Conan said she's supposed to be pure in a way, and yet there's a slyness and a strategic capability to her. Because let's be honest, she chose the perfect knife, knew the perfect weapon to use, and in my view, she was as willing to knife one of the guards herself as she was to hand the knife over to Conan. Remember, she got 3 guys drunk, knowing that if it got out, they'd be killed. Like, she's pure, but her loyalties are purely to Conan. And if anyone else endangers Conan, she's Mama Bear. So we do have to bear that quality in mind for the character. This is not like, that's the thing. Like, she's like, you look at Éowyn. If someone came at Theoden with a sword, will she knife him? Yeah. If someone came at Faramir with a sword, yeah, that person's already got their throat slit. We all know Éowyn's a better fighter than Faramir. But the thing is, should we regard, let me see, is Arwen any less of a character than Éowyn simply because she's not a swordswoman? No. They both represent different aspects of the female. And just as, let me see, Samwise is not a swordsman, but is he any less a male character than Conan? Not entirely. Conan is the king archetype and the barbarian archetype. Okay. Aragorn Elisar is purely the king archetype. Okay. Sam, honestly, is a character who's kind of hard to pin down in some ways. He's obviously not a warrior. He's arguably not a king because, you know, he's not exactly king of the Shire. He's probably not the magician. If anything, he's probably the lover. He has more in common with Ted Mosby than he, or Marshall Erickson, than he does, let's say, Gawain. Now, yes, I know he picks up a sword in defense of Frodo. Yes, he's basically Frodo's vassal. But we got to bear in mind, his ending is like, what does he want at the end of the day? He just wants to go home and father, what is it, a dozen kids with his girlfriend and just Rose. That's right. I think it's Rosie.
Rosie.
Yeah. He wants to, like, let's be honest. Sam's the character who left a girl back home. But unlike Maze Hughes, he makes it back home. But he's the lover archetype. Mary is a Mary arguably is a warrior archetype. Same with Pippin. Frodo's a magician archetype. Like, we all know this. Like, arguably Frodo, well, Frodo's kind of a priest, but he is a magician archetype, I mean. These are all aspects of the male. Only the king archetype represents all four major aspects of male sexuality. You know, you have magician, lover, warrior, and king. And the king represents all the others embodied into one. So Aragorn and Conan represent them. And Howard was someone who well understood archetypes and these ideas.
Yeah.
But this is the sort of thing that I'm actually going to say something very interesting, I think. What I find funny is that when it comes to other sword and sorcery stories, none of them have ever written a king archetype character. They're all warrior archetypes.
I've heard an argument that David Gimmel's legend is like a former warrior turned king who wants to go out as a warrior kind of archetype.
Oh, okay, then Gimel gets the prize. Okay, never mind.
Because originally, if Schwarzenegger was going to do the third Conan movie, it was going to be an adaptation of Gimmel's legend, of an old man Conan going out for one last glory before facing Crom to.
Well, arguably that's still the king archetype, just a warrior character. Like, because you got to bear in mind, Theoden is the king archetype, and he's basically doing that, going out for one last bit of glory, and to do the right thing. He's still the king. He's also a warrior. It's just the king archetype is priest, warrior, and lover all rolled into one, and also father in a way. Typically, that's the king archetype. Now, if he's a young king, that's different. Like, he's not going to. Well, it's possible he might be a father, but typically he'll just be lover, priest, and warrior.
Well, guys, I gotta wrap this up in the next minute or two, so I'm sorry.
Oh, don't apologize. Don't apologize.
That's fine.
All right, so let's see. I'll try getting the camera back on for a minute. There. So don't forget, folks, to check out Substack. If the links are not in the description, I will have to post them in the comment section. So don't forget to smash not only the like and subscribe button here if you enjoyed this, but also go to Substack, go to Tom's Substack, go to the others that participate in Sword and Saturday, and ours, and smash the subscribe button there, and read the stories if you like reading fantasy stories.
And review them. Comment, leave messages in the comment section. It helps.
Yeah.
It helps us writers.
Now, if on the other hand you only enjoy Howard stuff, that's fine too. We'll be back with more Howard stuff very soon here on this channel. But we also have Howard stuff on Substack because Sword and Saturday, a lot of the writers are aspiring after Howard. So if it's something you'd be interested in, go check it out. Yeah, so don't forget to subscribe on Substack, subscribe here, and have a great day. And till next